So I want to make a quick video that recaps basically what Eric Helms said and my approach to strength training and bodybuilding style training, which is endurance, and how they both provide the same amount of hypertrophy work. So if we look at strength training, we're basically using heavy weights plus low reps, which is what powerlifters do, especially in the I'd say 4 to 6 rep range. Endurance work, which is more what bodybuilders do, is lighter weights and high reps. And basically that's the main difference. One is generally working more of the density of your muscles, the neurological pathways, etc. And one is just working the muscle size. And basically, what this leads to is strength training is mainly used for neurological patterns. And what happens is, as you perform a movement more frequently, such as your bench, your overhead press, your deadlifts, you become stronger at them. And not only do you become stronger by doing them frequently, but doing them with heavy weights. When you do bodybuilding style training, your focus is to build the actual muscle and work the muscle. And what I've noticed is that bodybuilding style training requires a lot of energy because those high reps will require much more fuel, as from what I've noticed, than more of the lower reps. And what I can conclude, like Eric Helms said, is that strength training builds more of the muscle size, whereas bodybuilding builds more of the fuel size. Now, while endurance work is basically your fuel and strength training is a lot of the muscle, there is kind of like a battle going on between which one provides more hypertrophy work. And I feel that both of them provide the exact same hypertrophy work. Because if we take a look at this example that Eric Helms showed, we can see there's your bodybuilding approach and your powerlifting approach. Your high reps, your low reps, your increased sets, decreased sets, but then with powerlifting, you're doing more weight. With bodybuilding, you're doing a much lighter weight, but your reps are higher and your reps are lower here, focusing on muscle in one, strength on another. Now, if you look at this, what he's done is he's basically switched the weight on the high reps to make it seem like both of them produce the exact same amount of total weight lifted, right? Because in the end of the day, when you look at the reps times sets times weight, you're still lifting 3,000 pounds in both cases, regardless of how you decide to split it up. Now, sure, one leads to more muscle and endurance, one leads to more strength and neurological pathway efficiency, but if you think of it, when you're doing strength training and taking those rests in between, right? You're actually using a lot of fuel to help support the strength training, such as creatine, right? And if you look at where I directed fuel to, it was to the bodybuilding style training. But didn't I just say that strength training was also based upon fuel? See, strength training requires fuel, as and endurance training requires strength, because as you use progressive overload, you're still becoming stronger. So even though a lot of people say, okay, well, endurance work is basically energy, strength training is basically your muscle and patterns, it's actually both. It works both ways, because your endurance also increases your strength, because eventually this person is going to have to increase his weight from 100 pounds to 110 to 120, still with the high reps. The strength athlete is still going to take his rest breaks in between, and as he increases his weight and his reps and sets, he's going to require more fuel. So in the end, they're both actually, even as they're lifting the same amount of weight, they're still both using the same amount of fuel and the same amount of and they're still getting progressive overload, so they're still both going to build muscle, and they're both going to use the same amount of fuel. So what happens is that technically I would like to propose, just like Eric Helms, that your hypertrophy work with both of these methods is going to be the exact same thing, because you're using the exact same principles. You're increasing your pathways, you're increasing the glycogen received from your glycogen stores. Your muscles now have more fuel, they have more that basically they have more energy. So I don't really see the difference between these two. The only difference between strength training and endurance training is that with strength training, you're gonna become more effective at lifting heavier weights, and with endurance training, you're gonna become more effective with the high reps. But in the end, with the hypertrophy response, they're both going to stimulate the exact same hypertrophy response. And I would like to completely agree with Eric Helms on this. And I don't see how one could be more beneficial compared to another if they're both based on the same principles as well as the same total weight, which should lead to the same amount of muscular growth. It's just that you're going to become better at one than another. Obviously, a powerlifter should focus on strength training and a bodybuilder should focus on the high reps, but in the end they could still have the same hypertrophy response if they train correctly through both of these techniques.